Imagine you're trying to sleep at night, and suddenly there's an unbearable itch between your fingers and on your wrists. So intense that it steals your sleep completely. You scratch and scratch, but there's no relief. Now imagine this wasn't happening to you today, but to a human being thousands of years ago, with no doctor, no cream, no idea what was actually causing it. Yes, we're talking about scabies, a condition caused by a tiny mite called Sarcoptes scabii. This mite is so small it's invisible to the naked eye, yet its effects are so severe that people simply cannot sleep through the night because of it. In this video, we're going on a fascinating journey through the pages of history, through ancient civilizations, to see how our ancestors dealt with this invisible enemy. We'll explore, did ancient Egyptians suffer from scabies? How did Greek and Roman doctors understand this condition? What was it like in medieval Europe? And finally, how did science finally identify the actual mite? This isn't just the story of a disease. It's a story of human curiosity, patience, and a long battle against a tiny, nearly invisible creature. Let's begin this journey from where it all started, the prehistoric world. Scabies is not a new problem at all. Researchers believe this mite has co-evolved with mammals for millions of years. And as humans gradually began living in groups, this mite began traveling along with them. Whenever people came into close contact with each other, whether within families, tribes, or trade caravans, the mite easily passed from one person to another. So it's fair to say that wherever humans built societies, scabies followed. It has been a silent companion throughout human history, sometimes spreading like an epidemic, sometimes staying hidden, but never fully disappearing. When we talk about ancient history, Egypt is often the first name that comes to mind. Egyptians are known for keeping remarkably detailed records, whether about pyramids, mummies, or medical practices. Historians and medical researchers point to the Ebers Papyrus, written around 1550 BCE, roughly 3,500 years ago, as one of the oldest known medical documents in the world. This papyrus describes numerous ailments, including skin conditions with symptoms resembling scabies, itching, irritation, and small bumps on the skin. However, people at that time had no idea these symptoms were caused by a microscopic mite. They had no microscopes, and their scientific understanding was nowhere near today's level. As a result, such conditions were often attributed to evil spirits or bad blood. Treatments were shaped by these beliefs. Herbal pastes, oils, and rituals were commonly used. Now let's talk about Mesopotamia, the region around present-day Iraq, often called the cradle of civilization. Clay tablets from this region also mention skin diseases. The Sumerians and Babylonians had their own medical practitioners, known as ASU, who combined herbs, prayers, and basic surgical techniques for treatment. Interestingly, in these ancient societies, illness and spirituality were deeply intertwined. If someone developed a skin disease, people often believed they had angered a deity or fallen victim to a curse. So treatment wasn't limited to medicine alone. It also involved prayers, offerings, and rituals. But there's a silver lining here too. Because people took illness seriously, they began carefully observing and recording symptoms. These very observations later became the foundation of medical science. It's also worth noting that ancient Egyptians placed great importance on hygiene. They bathed regularly, used oils and perfumes, and kept their clothing clean. This suggests they may have unknowingly tried to control such skin conditions, even without understanding the actual scientific cause. So we can already see that diseases like scabies aren't a modern problem at all. Their history is as old as civilization itself. Now let's move to Greece and Rome, where, for the first time, people began trying to understand this disease in a somewhat more scientific way. Ancient Greece is considered a turning point in the world of medicine. For the first time, people tried to understand diseases naturally, rather than simply attributing them to evil spirits or divine anger. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, mentioned skin diseases in his writings. although he never used a term directly, equivalent to scabies. His descriptions include symptoms strikingly similar to it: itching, skin irritation, and minor infections. Hippocrates and his followers believed that diseases resulted from an imbalance of the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They viewed skin diseases as a result of bad humors trying to escape through the skin. While this theory doesn't hold up by modern scientific standards, it was a major intellectual step for its time because it began treating disease as a natural process rather than a supernatural punishment. Now let's talk about Rome. The Roman physician Aulus Cornelius Celsus, who lived in the 1st century CE, described skin conditions in detail in his medical encyclopedia, De Medicina, including symptoms matching scabies. But perhaps the most fascinating name here is Galen, a famous Greek physician of the 2nd century CE who practiced in Rome. He, too, wrote about skin diseases, and his observations influenced European medicine for centuries afterward. It's important to understand that these ancient doctors had no microscopes, so they couldn't directly observe the mite. But they did begin categorizing symptoms: which itching worsened at night, which skin conditions were contagious, and which weren't. Interesting fact: many historians believe the word scabies itself comes from Latin scabera, meaning to scratch. This word was already being used in Roman times for any itchy skin condition, whether or not it was the scabies we know today. Public baths, called thermae, were extremely popular in Roman society. People bathed and socialized there in groups. While these baths were good for hygiene, ironically, these close contact group environments were also perfect places for contagious skin conditions to spread. When large numbers of people come into close physical contact in one place, parasites like mites can easily pass from person to person. Similarly, in Roman army camps, where thousands of soldiers lived together in close quarters, skin infections were common. Historians believe that diseases often traveled alongside military campaigns, moving from one place to another as soldiers carried their weapons and supplies. And, unknowingly, these invisible parasites too. So in the Greek and Roman period, we see medicine gradually shifting toward a more observation-based approach, although the actual cause remained a mystery. Now let's move forward to medieval Europe and the Islamic Golden Age, where important steps were taken towards solving this mystery. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe entered what's often called the Dark Ages, a period when scientific and medical progress slowed considerably. But during this same time, in other parts of the world, particularly the Islamic world, science and medicine were advancing rapidly. This period is known as the Islamic Golden Age. One of the most important figures of this era was Ibn Zuhr, known in the West as Avenzoar, a 12th century Andalusian, Spanish physician. Ibn Zuhr is widely credited in medical history as one of the first to identify a tiny parasite, which he called Su, or Sobe, behind scabies. This was a groundbreaking moment. For the first time, someone suggested that itching might not simply be caused by an internal imbalance, but by an actual living organism residing within the skin. This idea was remarkably ahead of its time, considering germ theory as we know it didn't exist yet. Islamic scholars of this era placed great emphasis on observation and experimentation. They had access to translated Greek medical texts, which they had translated into Arabic and added their own original observations to this body of knowledge. This is why the Islamic Golden Age is often regarded as a bridge period in medical history, one that carried ancient knowledge forward into modern science. Now back to Europe. Hygiene conditions in medieval Europe were fairly poor, especially in cities, where people lived in crowded conditions. Clean water was scarce, and regular bathing wasn't as common as it had been in Roman times. As a result, skin diseases, including scabies, became quite widespread. At the time, scabies was often confused with other, more serious diseases like leprosy, since both produce visible skin symptoms. People suffering from scabies were sometimes isolated from society, out of fear that it was a contagious curse. Medieval European medicine still relied heavily on the four humors theory inherited from Hippocrates and Galen. Doctors treated patients with bloodletting, purging, inducing vomiting, or using laxatives, and herbal remedies, which, by modern standards, weren't very effective, but were the best options available at the time. Interestingly, some traditional remedies, such as the use of sulfur, actually worked, even though people didn't understand the scientific reason why. Sulfur naturally has antiparasitic properties that help kill mites. This was essentially an accidental discovery made through trial and error, and it remains part of some traditional treatments even today. As we move toward the Renaissance period, observation and experimentation began to play an increasingly important role in science. And this is where the journey truly begins toward finally uncovering the real secret behind scabies, the tiny mite itself. We'll explore that story in the next part. By the 17th century, a powerful new scientific tool had become available in Europe, the microscope. This invention opened up an entirely new world, allowing humans for the first time to see things invisible to the naked eye. In 1687, two Italian scientists, Giovanni Cosimo Bonomo and Giacinto Sestoni, became the first to formally describe the scabies mite and prove that this disease was caused by a living parasite, not bad humors or a curse. This discovery is considered a landmark moment in medical history because it was the first time a specific, identifiable cause, a microscopic organism, was scientifically established for a human disease. This discovery was so significant that many historians consider it an early precursor to the germ theory of disease, which was later fully established in the 19th century by scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch. However, even after this major discovery, it took considerable time for this knowledge to be fully accepted and integrated into medical practice. Confusion about scabies persisted well into the 18th and 19th centuries, largely because communication and knowledge sharing weren't as fast as they are today. In the 19th century, as microscope technology improved further, scientists studied the scabies mite, formerly named Sarcoptes scabii, in much greater detail. They came to understand that the female mite burrows into the upper layer of the skin. She lays her eggs there. These eggs hatch within a few days, producing new mites. This process triggers an allergic reaction in the skin, the primary cause of the intense itching and rashes. This discovery was crucial because it finally gave treatment a scientific direction. Doctors were no longer just treating symptoms. They were now targeting the root cause, the mite itself. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, sulfur-based ointments became a common treatment, a remedy that had been used traditionally since medieval times, but now with a proper scientific explanation behind it. Later, in the 20th century, even more effective treatments were developed, such as permethrin cream and oral medications, which are still widely used to treat scabies today. This entire journey, from the ancient Egyptian papyrus to the observations of the Islamic Golden Age, to Bonomo and Sestoni's microscope discovery, is a perfect example of how human curiosity and persistence can gradually solve even the most stubborn mysteries. The story of scabies, a seemingly small disease, is actually a much bigger story about the evolution of medical science itself. In the final part, we'll look at where scabies stands today and what lessons we can take from this entire history. Today, in the 21st century, we understand scabies remarkably well. We know that it's caused by a microscopic mite, Sarcoptes scabii var. Hominis. It spreads through skin-to-skin contact. It causes intense itching, especially at night. It's treatable, through medicated creams and oral medications. Timely treatment can lead to a complete cure. But here's an interesting and slightly surprising fact. Even with all our advanced medical science, scabies remains a common problem worldwide today. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, scabies is classified as a neglected tropical disease, meaning it remains especially prevalent in places with poor hygiene conditions, overcrowding, or limited access to healthcare, such as refugee camps, low-income communities, and parts of the developing world. This teaches us an important lesson. This disease never truly became just history. It's still with us today. The only difference is that now we understand it, we can treat it, and we know how to prevent it. Knowledge our ancient ancestors simply didn't have. So what can we take away from this entire journey? Lesson 1. Human diseases and human civilization evolved together. As people began living in groups, cities, and close-knit communities, contagious diseases began spreading alongside them. Lesson 2. Science is a gradual, ongoing process. It took roughly 3,000 plus years from the Egyptian papyrus to Bonomo's microscope discovery to fully understand something as seemingly small as an itchy skin condition. This teaches us how vital patience and continuous observation are to scientific progress. Lesson 3. Cross-cultural knowledge sharing is essential. If Islamic Golden Age scholars hadn't translated Greek texts and added their own research to them, modern medicine in Europe might not have developed as quickly as it did. Lesson 4. There's a direct link between hygiene, sanitation, and disease prevention. From ancient Egyptians to today, wherever clean water, regular bathing, and uncrowded living conditions are available, such diseases tend to be far less common. So the next time you or someone around you experiences an itch, remember, this is a disease that has shared a relationship with humanity for thousands of years. Our ancestors fought this tiny mite without microscopes, without modern medicine, sometimes with herbs, sometimes with rituals, sometimes through simple trial and error. And today, standing on the foundation of those very observations, we have effective, science-based treatments. This isn't just the story of a disease, it's a story of human resilience, curiosity, and how small observations, passed down through generations, eventually transform into major discoveries. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what other history and science topics you'd like us to cover. See you in the next video with another fascinating topic. Thank you.